will die, and you've got only yourself to blame. If this were one of her books, she'd rage at the heroine for getting on that first plane. Why would you leave the comfort of your house where there is an endless supply of tea, where it is warm and the air doesn't attack your face with frozen licks, where the only danger is a paper cut from turning a page too fast? No. Stop. Deep breath. What would Piper do? She'd stop complaining and get shit done. She spoke to her suitcase again. The ancient-looking pilot, a crotchety old man who didn't like Grace one bit, stared at her as she kicked her luggage, speaking to it like it could respond. His beady eyes were judging her. She could feel it. Silently, he was asking her who she thought she was. And he was right to ask. This was entirely out of the norm for her. Grace Tumbler didn't do adventures. She didn't take risks, gallivanting through the country's airports to get to Alaska as quickly as possible. Way out of character. Before her little trip across the United States, Grace had never ridden on a plane. Now she had been on 4, and the 5th one, the bush plane made of paper, would be her coffin. Grace had read one too many books about tragic plane crashes to think it would be safe. With her legs trembling and her heart beating in the back of her throat, Grace nodded at Burl. "This is really our plane?" He grunted his response. "And it can make it to Point Hope?" He nodded. "Come on, girlie. There's a storm rolling in. We gotta beat it." Excuse me, but shouldn't we wait then? Let the storm pass?" "No, I gotta be in Point Hope on business. If you don't come with me now, I don't know when I'll be back. You either get on, or you can forget Point Hope." Grace took a slow breath and closed her eyes. For Piper. Because she is in trouble and obviously has been kidnapped and brainwashed by some kind of Alaskan cult. Bookish librarians are totally capable of finding missing people in the Alaskan wilderness. Said no one. Ever. If this were a story, Grace would have a badass mother or sister to emulate. If she was going to be inspired by anyone, it would have to be Piper. And maybe a few book heroines that would totally march up to a bush plane and head off into the frozen and wintry Alaska to look for a missing friend. Her mind flipped through all of her extensive knowledge, and she nodded. Right. She would be like Piper, and Jacinda St. James Winter, the heroine of her favorite series, was a scientist who had discovered an ancient civilization of people living in the ocean, only to fall in love with their prince. Jacinda and Piper would get on the plane in a heartbeat. No problem. Hell, Jacinda's name ended with Winter, which was basically synonymous with Alaska. That had to be fate or destiny or some other thing like that. Right? Grace followed Burl into the plane and took her seat, tucking her suitcase at her feet. While Burl prepared to take off, she squeezed her eyes shut. She kept them tightly closed when they took to the air. There was so much turbulence. Grace didn't know if it was normal. The other planes had been bigger. This one could fit in the library back home. There was something really wrong about a plane that could fit in a tiny library. Surely a strong wind would make it weave through the air in a terrifying fashion. She wanted to ask Burl, but she was too scared she would puke on him. If she did that, she was pretty sure the grumpy pilot would push her off his aircraft. This is really okay. Totally normal. Bumps and lurches continued to make the plane, and her stomach, shake violently. When she found Piper, she was going to strangle her for getting herself lost. If it wasn't for that, Grace would be sipping tea with Agnes while discussing the latest Jacinda St. James Winter book. "We're going down," Burl said. Calm as could be while the controls of his shitty plane screeched through the windy sky. "What?" Grace squeaked. "We're there already?" "No, we're going to crash."
Chapter 2. Sawyer. The wind was howling so loudly Sawyer would be dreaming about it. It was annoying as shit and wouldn't stop whistling by his ears. The snow was falling too fast and thick for him to continue his work on the radio tower. With a mumbled curse, he started putting his tools away. He could deal with the storm by shifting into his snow fox and finding shelter, but then his snowmobile and tools would be lost to the snow dump that was sure to fall from the sky. The only logical solution was to drive through the shitty weather until he got to the closest cabin. He could hunker down there until the storm cleared enough.